Okay. All right, so then why not look at as many bands as possible to get the most accurate true color image? So Prism samples at 107 bands across the beam here, so the visible, near, infrared, but each roughly 6.5 nanometers apart. So why not use the ones that affect the way humans see color and create a true color image? Prism RA from 380 nanometers to 780 nanometers, like this. So we have a bunch of different bands, and we're all going to, we're taking all the samplings from those bands, we're going to use that to create a true color image. This is kind of our step one. So what that is, it's a grayscale image of milliphosphate. So here we've only graphed the 690 nanometer band, and the image is 640 by 480 pixels, with each pixel being around 20 meters long. So for those unfamiliar with the Prism instrument, there are two different bandpass filters that illuminate out of band. This impacts data taken between wavelengths 631 nanometers and 710 nanometers, making it areas. So to correct for this, the regions outside the filtering boundary were interpolated into a quadratic function generating replacement values for the unreliable bands independently for each pixel of the image. And you have sample corrections in the graph right here. And so the red part is the unreliable data, and then right above it is the part that we've corrected. Step two. So basically, it's the same wavelength, 690 nanometers, the same band. But since that's part of the filter boundary, it's undergone the correction, and it appears slightly different. It's getting a lot larger as we go on. The CIE color function matching smart. So the CIE established the color matching functions almost a century ago, and it's updated them since to show how the wavelength of light affects color for humans, and is an integral, pun intended, part of the true color process. However, before the CIE color matching functions can be used, it must be splined to match being used. So the CIE functions are found every 5 nanometers, and the Prism instrument takes samples every 6.5 nanometers. So we need to spline it together so that way we could use the two together. And so once splined, we had to buffer the CIE color function matching spline as well. So that way it's 107 data points long that can be used with the paths. And this was done for each of the X, Y, and Z color matching functions. Once we had that, we multiplied the three splines we had by the radiance spectra for each pixel in the image. So that way we kind of have a weighted value for each, or a weighted spline for each X, Y, and Z. We did this, we put it through Newton codes integration to find out what the X, Y, and Z CIE tristimulus values are. And so that's kind of a precursor to sRGB later on down the line. Sandwiched into one single image cube with 3 bands, the X, Y, and Z. And those were the third dimension of that. All right, so once we had this, we had something that was kind of colorimetrically correct, a realistic brightness. So to fix this, the data had to be scaled to the monomer's brightness. So luminance is defined as 683 times the maximum Wi-Fi stimulus value in the image. However, since there are slight errors in our data, we had to use the 3 sigma value to represent the maximum, just to make sure that there weren't like extrema that had some errors, something like that. Dependent on the monitor use of display images. Some of the true color images I have later on down the line in the presentation aren't 100% accurate because I didn't know the brightness of the projector and things like that. Step 3. So this is just we graph the Y value here, and so you can see it has a lot larger difference. The center is much darker. That's only like a precursor on it. So, all right, so once we have the X, Y, and Z values, which once again are not red, green, and blue values, to get into the sRGB color space, we have to put it through a transformation matrix. And so we have this right on there. Those values, I think, are taken from the CIE's protocol, how to go into the sRGB. And then so once we put that through that, we finally do have our RGB values. And then once we have the RGB values, that's to go through a 2.2 gamma correction in order to be displayed properly on computer monitors. That's the standard way to encode it. And then you do a correction to get into a 24-bit system. All right, and so finally, that puts us in a true color image cube. All right. And so there's step 4, which is a quote-unquote true color image of Mars. That's a once again nilly class. But to keep in mind, I didn't know the brightness of the monitor or the calibrated the projector to be like a true color projector. So it might not be 100% accurate. I have a gallery of fun true color images. All right. So here I have one of the polar regions on Mars with gypsum dunes. It kind of has a boundary. So we have on the left the enhanced visible color, which is one of the accessory products, and then on the right we have the true color that corresponds to that. All right. And then here we have another with the northwest rim of Olympus Mons. And again, we have the enhanced visible color on the left and the true color on the right. And here we have a repeated sulfate and clay beds in the West Gal crater, which is really interesting because this is one of the most geologically interesting sites. But then when you look at the true color, it's kind of just bland. All right, and then here's another one. This is error chaos and neurological variability. Again, the enhanced visible color, it kind of has a lot of variation. Neurologically, it does have a lot of variation. It's kind of just butterscotch. So the true color really doesn't have a big scientific meaning. It just looks cool. I'm just clarify that. I guess it's for PR. I don't know. And then we have again. Here's Nilly Class A, and there's the enhanced visible color and the true color. And finally, I have a infrared composite, which is a false color image that just shows some of the geologic variability, and I have a true color mosaic of the same scene. Really all right, and that's all I have. So if anyone has questions.
Hi, Bob Dean, JPL. Hello. Hi, Bob Dean, JPL. If you're pulling just 3 bands out of a multispectral instrument, 0-band filters, but the higher responsivity is quite wideband, do you do anything to compensate for that?
You're saying to
Well, if your spectral filter is like this, the ice responsivity is this big.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you took a whole bunch of throughout that space, you might get potentially better color rendition.
Oh, you're talking about the filter boundary correction?
Yeah.
All right. So with the filter boundary correction, different bands, I originally started out with 10. It made much of a difference, and because the filter boundary only really causes variation in all area, it wasn't worth the processing time to do more than just 4 bands when it came out with a similar result.
Campbell from our last space science laboratory. I was wondering, have you done any of this for the South Polar residual CO2 cap?
Yeah, I don't know if I was given a bunch of images and we went through them, but we certainly can. As long as there's a CRISM image taken of it, we can do the same process. In fact, we actually did the same process to images taken by Avarice. So we actually looked at Maui, and so we also have a true color version of Maui as well. Although that's not really useful when you can just take a photo of Maui.
So. These are more than just kind of pretty products because they demonstrate that Mars has a lot of contamination, sand and dust, and it's everywhere. And that's why it looks so bland. So you really have to kind of go into enhancements to get the features to show up. And they're above signal of noise. they're above the noise level, but I think you've demonstrated that you're not going to have a parking lot full of pure gypsum in terms of the signature. Other questions? All right. Well, and next presentation is by Rodriguez, Improved Data Analysis Tools for Thermal Emission Spectrometry.
All right. I'm Calvin Rodriguez. I'm a student developer for the USGS Astrogeology Science Center here in Flagstaff. And we are currently working on creating new data access tools for MGS test. Specifically, is create new tools for tests that kind of address some of the challenges that you normally see with tests with hyperspectral data and high dimensionality. Second of all is come up with new ways to model the data, minimize setup costs, ingestion costs, and be able to perform fast queries on the data set. And the way we're going to accomplish this is that we're going to try to model the databases, distribute it on a cluster, and figure out which of the the 3 databases which are most representative of want to see commonly used out in the public. Basically, figure out which models on which databases, all kinds of questions. So tests collected about 260 spectra in its lifetime over several Mars years. Out of the different missions that's gone to Mars spectral resolution, also very, very, very coarse. So it is very coarse, but it does make it good for global scales. And the hyperspectral data that the research scientists care about is obviously we can use it to figure out different physical properties on the surface of Mars, which helps better understand the history of Mars and also better understand the geology we have here on Earth. So as far as how the actual data set looks like, once you expand all the bands plus all the other fields, we got about 519 fields across the 206 million records. It has about 200 gigabyte footprint, and it's normalized across 9 different tables. So the footprint is pretty small, it's homogeneous. This kind of makes it kind of an ideal testing grounds for this sort of thing, because it is. So it's very tractable. Whatever we learn here, we can later expand to other bigger missions like EMIS. Definitely also less coarse. We will run into something like EMIS. It will be a superset of challenge we will run with something like TESS. So there already exists some tools for accessing the test data set, the original binaries. It's basically vanilla in the test data tool. You program that you run through the command line, through the web app, basically a web form that you basically go to fill out the form. You submit a query, and eventually you'll get an email to be attached with the query results. So all of these will get the job done. If you want to get the data you want to get your hands on, these two will do it. Vanilla kind of requires kind of like a process. The test data tool, a huge form to fill out. You're limited to about 2 gigabytes per query. The query will return 1 to 2 gigabytes if you do the query. The data footprint, gigabytes. That makes it very frustrating if you need large amounts of data at the same time, especially further obnoxious if you're trying to analysis on this data. So our first goal with this new tool is basically create a distributed analytics for the test data set. So to keep the scope fairly limited, we're going to focus on spatial temporal. The first operation is going to involve just bidding over lat long and solar longitude at different scales, and use that as our first benchmarks. The three general databases we're going to stick with, Postgres and Cassandra. So it is a very popular document-based database. So it's probably the most popular NoSQL database out there. It has built-in distributed retrieval support, so you can basically create a distributed database for free out of the box. PostgreSQL, of course, is more traditional. Anybody who does probably work with Postgres at some point. Enables spatial support through PostGIS. Everybody knows that it's kind of the traditional RDMS that a lot of people use. Is a derivative of HBase, which is kind of based on it's a combination of a key store and a key value pair, and it is essentially like a Google Big Table, except you can take advantage of the Apache map reduce ecosystem. So it is by Apache, so any other things that Apache makes, you can kind of integrate well with Cassandra, and Cassandra also lends itself better to distribution like data stores like databases can, unlike Postgres, which you basically, trying to create a distributed version of Postgres is a pain. So better to more vertical scaling, so you basically create one node of hardware, more specific than memory, while the others can be distributed over cheaper hardware. So this is the DCOS logo. So what happens when you try to translate to PowerPoint. So what's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting is going to be Apache Spark. So what Apache Spark gives us, very powerful, high volume data, high volume, large amount of map reduce operations. It sits on top of the databases. Interface between all the different databases, so we don't have to write a different one. We just have to set up the connections for each one. And once you get past the initial setup, then you're pretty much good to go. Queries for free. We're going to use basically a Python interface with PySpark. And that's basically our interface. That's going to be our interface, basically just a Python script through PySpark. And so in that case, it kind of abstracts away the database from the user. DCOS, on the other hand, it stands for Data Center Operating System. What it does is that it allows us to also abstract the hardware, basically schedule all the services for us, create a bunch of hardware as a single pool resources that we can use on, and including Spark, and we don't have to necessarily worry about it. One thing that we're doing that is somewhat unconventional is on top of commodity hardware. We're using commodity hardware, but we also have our Lustre file system that we use as part of our USGS. And that's actually the file system we're using for storing all the data sources for all the different databases. The part of the hardware that matters, that is the data directories for each individual data store inside the Lustre file system. So here's kind of like the general architecture for like this cluster we have of all the databases plus Postgres plus Spark. This is the entirety of DCOS. Where our services are based back in groups, they're all distributed across different processes. Obviously, all of them distributed except for Postgres because also being distributed for us, and at the kernel level, I also handle the allocation of hardware for it. Obviously, manually allocating CPUs and around anybody who's working in the HPC environment is familiar with this sort of thing. So that is ultimately our goal. So ultimately our goal is to have a Python interface to 3 different data stores, each fully loaded with test data set and completion. It is still a work in progress. So while we do have DTLs running on our own cluster and Postgres, PostgreSQL at this point is fully loaded because that was the easiest one to load. MongoDB does not like the cluster file system. Not been working out for our needs. Standard Postgres been great so far. Trouble just finding them. They also establish locks. It's a mess. But these two don't seem to have a problem. One thing we've done already is so we also created the ingestion code for the original binaries. So right now there's a library called PyIO. There's a new module for it for IO tests. Based, input output. In the original binary formats that tests shipped with, any given file into a pandas data frame. And in memory, high speed and data analytics tool for Python. Anybody who wants to work with tests and wants to mess around with it, you would just search for PyIO on results. So you can import that library and start loading that data. So we do have the data loaded. We have the first thing we do is create maps to make sure that the data looks right. Here's an image of thermal inertia for Mars year 25. So longitude of 172. So basically approaching sandstorm season, which is basically what you're seeing right here. Sandstorms slowly picking up over time. So everything seems to be right. This thing, we're able to generate images relatively fast as we start tweaking the databases and actually stand up a distributed Cassandra server. Future work, we need to get Cassandra stand up and distributed. Another thing we have to do is start doing some proper data mining, actually analyze the data, get into the fun stuff. We're trying to stand up databases on a cluster, basically do some outlier detection, some interpolation, and really make this thing possible. And that's where we're at.
Concepts. Is the long-term expectation that these databases will be publicly facing for people to use and put on data sort of on demand, or parallel thing from which you'll produce these science results, which we'll get out of that instead?
That's a good question. I mean, we'll definitely put on instructions to how to set it up. I think that's another question for my author, Jay.
Yes.
Thanks, Jay. That's a good idea.
I mean, we're here talking about PSPI, so yeah, the goal is
Cool.
that this should be exposed via PSPI.
Yes.
Yeah, that we should put this capability on their data system.
Very difficult to access. because it has the ancient format and ancient capability to interact. This is a breath of fresh air. Questions, folks?
Just a follow-up. So if all I'm interested in is working on test data with the pandas data frames, is that currently publicly available?
So, yeah, that's publicly available. You can do that right now on your computer.
Is by Rausch, and the title is Dawn Framing Camera Series X.
Go back to the outer planetary system.
Warten Sie einen Augenblick.
Okay. I will talk today about the Dawn framing camera series atlases. As mentioned was already this morning by Dave Williams, geological mapping and also the photogeological mapping starts with lower resolution and then we go up to higher resolution. That gave us the possibility to produce 3 different series atlases. Reminder to you, the Dawn spacecraft is equipped with 3 experiments, a framing camera, a visible and infrared spectrometer, and the particle detector gradient. The Dawn framing camera is a typical 1K by 1K framing camera. It has 7 and a clear filter, and I will talk today only about the Dawn camera carries 2 identical framing cameras, but only one was used for the imaging campaign. The other was just a reserve for navigation. Dawn at Sirius, it was in 3 different mapping phases. Then in the HAMO, high altitude mapping orbit, and then in the LAMO, the low altitude mapping orbit. It's now back to a higher altitude orbit, and we are still waiting for a decision of NASA headquarters. What shall be going on with Dawn? The mission will end at the end of this month. Okay, the Sirius illumination was always almost the same during the whole phases. It was completely different to the Vesta, but the rotation axis of Sirius is almost perpendicular to the ecliptic, so the illumination did not vary a lot. I'm missing coverage of the really most northern and southern pole regions. Okay, we need, of course, for the nomenclature, and for the atlases also a nomenclature, agreement with the USGS and the IAU that all craters must be named after gods and goddesses of agriculture and vegetation. World mythology that was strongly required by the IAU since it's the first naming of a dwarf planet. They wanted to have the mythology from the whole world and not only Roman or Greek mythology. We were selected 130 names for geological features. They all were proposed by the Dawn team and agreed by the international union. You can find the entire nomenclature on the usual nomenclature web pages here at USGS. Okay, the first survey orbit, mosaics, the images were taken, these images were mapped using DTM, which is the data. In the survey orbit, we also had to select the longitude system, and in agreement with IAU and PDS, the tiny crater Kate was used for the definition of 0 degrees. from the series, from the survey mosaic, a three-tile atlas of 1 to 200, 1 to 2 million scale. That was the survey mosaic with a nomenclature which was improved at this time. And here you can see the three tiles of the survey atlas, two polar regions and two equatorial maps. And just a reminder, the gate, it's located almost at 0 degrees longitude, and it was 0 degrees longitude, which was defined after Arbeitspace telescope data. We went to Hamburg, much more down, the resolution of the images became much better, now 140 meter per pixel. 2,490 images were taken in 6 cycles, so we imaged the whole series 6 times here and 4 times with off-radial angles, which gave us the opportunity to calculate a high-resolution Harmo digital elevation model. From the first cycle, mosaic and filled minor gaps with images from other tiles. This time we produced an atlas of 50 tiles. The resolution is 1 to 750,000. Again, a global mosaic of scales, and you can notice that there's much more nomenclature now. The 15 tiles atlas scheme, which was also used for the geological mapping of seals. An example, one of the 15 tiles, you can see that's the image data, that's an overview, there's some digital elevation model, and there's also a lot of information about the data processing, the data and the instrument on the right side of the map tile. Now let's go to LAMO. So LAMO was final orbit. We got about 31,300 images during LAMO in 11 cycles. The first 4 cycles were used to produce a global mosaic. The colleagues were not able to produce all these 31,000 images for a LAMO digital elevation model, processing again on the high altitude mapping orbit digital elevation model. We produced a 62 tile atlas of 1 to 250,000. 62 tile atlas was already suggested by Gleary and Benson in the paper, but from my knowledge, it's the first time that a 62 tile atlas was finished for a planetary body. Once again, the global mosaic, it's still the Harmo mosaic, since you will not see any difference in LAMO on the PowerPoint presentation, but it now contains the complete 130 features. And here you can see the 62 tiles of the atlas. Once again, an example for one of the maps. Again, colored digital elevation model. The image data itself. As all these mosaics, it's a small bodies node. The disadvantage at the small body, the advantage as a small bodies node is that you can get there all the digital elevation models and the color mosaics. But the disadvantage is that you have to download the whole data set in one zip file. The mosaics on our website at DLR, look on the different atlases, select browse images and decide which data you want to download. I hope to give a similar presentation next time about an Adiona mosaic. We do not know if you will be allowed to go to Adiona.
Anything else to say? Any questions or comments? So
I think we can. I'm not really,
10 minutes.
I think the other person could go slow.
So the next presentation is by Lecoe, processing of the Mika and Near's observations of asteroid and Hayabusa mission. Where's this? It's your lucky day, you can go to sleep.
So, can you hear me? No? So I'm going to talk about some work I'm doing on processing the dataset from the Hayabusa mission camera, Amica, and then the force spectrometry years. So the goal of our work is to restore the dataset that is on PDS, on the planetary data systems, not released. More specifically, we want to radiometrically calibrate and photometrically correct the Amica dataset, color images of Itokawa. The existing archived dataset in the PS is not in reflectance and it's not corrected from the effect of fluid geometry. If we calibrate the Amica color images, it would be useful to combine it with the years for a more complete spectrum of Itokawa. So Itokawa was a target of the Hayabusa circumventory mission. It's Apollo type near Earth asteroid, so it's an Earth crossing orbit. Its surface is composition is similar to LL type olivine chondrite, so it's mostly olivine fluorescent. Already, without calibrating the images, see albedo and color variations in the Amica images. So here I put the band passes of the Amica color filters, and these actually includes the system efficiency, so you can see that they are not all the same level. You have an animation showing the rotation of Itokawa. We're using all the filters, so different level of brightness because they are different filters. And here, an example of a combination of color frames, but without any calibration, stacking and registering the filters together. This one is close to the true color, and this one is another kind of combination. And here, if we want to bring out with the more powdery regolith and crater rings, we can use different filters. And then the last one is combination of ratios without the differences in more mineralogy of the surface. So you can see that the regolith that is kind of red, diffuse kind of red, and then the old eroded crater rings that are more fresh, present in this one, appear inch brighter and bluer. And another set, this time much closer to the surface. Color we have, so here it's sandy, regolith, and then more rocky. Right. In the bottom you have very interesting boulder that was found. It's very dark and maybe position and the rest of it to cover. So once we calibrate the images, we can figure out what is the composition of it. Concerning the nearest data, so this is a point spectrometer ranging from 0.8 to 2.2 micron. We already implemented applications, so the IDS USGS software to implement ingest in the IDS software. It's called here I show you a preliminary map I've done using just IDL and the SPICE data project footprints. I think it's all the data from one folder from the PDS. So there are lots of footprints. Micron, you can already see some color variation, but it's not correctly for photometry. And, two plots, I think, from two different folders, and just to show the typically number of spectra that range from a few to 1,000. You can see we cover here part of bin 1 and part of bin 2. So if we combine with the Amica cover, we can kind of improve the coverage wavelength of the bin 1. So here I have a summary of the processing for the Amica. First, so we also use software. We developed and implemented new routines to process this data set. For example, Amica to IDS, which ingests all the clear and color images and so one thing we had to do for the dataset from the PDS is update the start time with the new application. Because we realized that the timing we had that was correct was different from the timing in the PDS dataset. Once we correct that, correction steps, so we divide by 16 for lossy data. We subtract bias, we do linearity correction, we implemented smear rule, division by fact field, so we do all of that here in this step. Okay, once we calibrate the images, we attach the splice strings and the code will be to next to the photometry mosaic. So I'm ready for this work already, but we don't have the photometry yet. It's an example of the calibration. Here you have a raw image. This one on the right is calibrated. The lower left is the smear that you have if you stretch the image differently. Okay, the smear, and then the one on the right was so calibrated, but you can see we still have the objects. So this is another problem we're working on. You may find the filters have a lot of scatter light or stray light, and then it's kind of spreading on the signal object. So we need to correct that. Example with the preliminary correction for scatter light. So raw, then the middle one is and then you can see that the scatter light is still here. And right, I think it's corrected with the transfer function, so it's kind of improving the sharpness of the image and partially correcting for the scatter light. We tried another kind of algorithm, this time in MATLAB, to see if we could correct better the scatter light and color scale here, the level in the background. So you can see the scatter light around the object, and after we some Lucy algorithm, it's kind of much sharper, and then the level of the background is almost zero. But we still need to check if the final IOF values are right. Is check the published work on the calibration. So they had only from DN to reflectance for 6 of the filters because the ground-based data only covered 6 of them. For DS, it was too dim, so they couldn't observe. Match. So the last filter is this one. I tried to match to the RTS spectrum, but it's a different phase angle to extract a conversion factor to this data set. So the cross of my test data set. So you see there's a trend near the band 1 that's going down, and my DS is a little bit too high. So I think it's because here I used the correction for capture light, so it's a little bit too high. I compare with the nearest instrument. So here you have the color spectrum for an observation. Here's at the same date, except that the footprints are much different. The global surface and then the nearest is just a tiny footprint. But we still have a pretty good correspondence, even at its absolute reflectance. It's some correction factors to match both. S is a little higher, so the band appears a bit too deep in Amica. Let's see. So then we, more about one of the routines we created in ISIS called SumSpice. So it's there to improve the pointing, the famous pointing and spacecraft position data for each images. Files from the gas tube processing. When it creates the DN of an object, each image has some file. In there, we extract this information to get updated pointing and position. Amica is also designed to improve the timing, so it can be used to update the timing from the PDS image to the time calculated by Bob Gaskin. This allowed us to basically improve the matching between the geometric backplanes and the so we successfully tested this on the data set and improved the backplanes, and we have a pretty good match between backplanes and images now that we can have. I also tested this routine on the Dawn Fleming camera data set of Vesta. Wanted also to control the color images for Vesta and work perfectly fine too. Our final goal is to create control mosaics for these objects and produce also updated terms that we can apply directly on the images without having to do all the processing I've done before. So in the end, I will archive the PS of the data process with some spice. And, yeah, and I forgot to say that this process works as long as there is a sum file for each image. Some examples of, so this is Amica Cal and projection, so calibration and projection. And here you have the raw images, the raw frames at the top, and at the bottom you have the processed one. Then you can see we removed on the left side the 5 with the polarizing filters. So we don't want the data if we analyze IRF, at least for now. It works on the field image and on subframes. And here it's a combination of these 3 frames in one mosaic, and it's actually the highest resolution you can get with one. It's like 5 centimeter pixels. It's pre-projected using the DSK port in ISIS. Also a DN version of that one. The example of the same thing with the colors, here just to show the projection, and you can combine the colors, and that is good data set. I have 2 two preliminary global maps of two color filters, so UL, UV, and W with more infrared. Black areas are where the viewing angles, like IE, are more than 90 degrees, I think. But the rest of the data set, you can see pretty nicely all the surface features. And you can extract color spectra. There. And the only thing here is the projection is not ideal for this object, so we actually, I think there's one projection that is limited, that is more adapted for small bodies, so, but I don't have yet. We'll use that later when we archive the data.
Okay, thank you. We have one more talk in this session by Arkanol. And it's IAU, and I forget the rest.
Okay, so I'd like to discuss the work of the IAU Working Group on cartographic coordinates and rotational elements, and the main product that we create a report every few years. I'd like to certainly thank colleagues on the working group, and in particular, the member Mike Hearn, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, but who contributed greatly to the working group and some of the efforts we've made, particularly for small bodies and coordinate systems with comments and asteroids. So the working group itself, I'll comment here on the general operation of the working group, some of the things that we do, mainly the report that we make, describe some of the contents of our upcoming report that we're about to issue, and mention some possibilities for the future. The IAU working group was formed, this working group was formed in 1976, so 41 years old now. It was formed in response to the United States and the Soviet Union trying to cooperate in some way on coordinate systems and also earlier nomenclature. The working group started issuing reports in 1979 and made the recommendations of the best ways systems on planetary bodies. The first report was issued in 1980, and approximately every 3 to 6 years since then, there's been a report on IAU General Assemblies happen. Our current, quote, 2015 report is about to come out. But the idea is to make recommendations, to be open to modifications of values. New data is collected, coordinate systems can improve, standards and constants can improve, but to make sure that you can handle multiple data sets. You don't need standards if you only have one data set or one set of images or something. You have multiple data sets, multiple missions, multiple products, and that's true in almost every case now in the solar system. So there needs to be a standardized set of mapping parameters. So this is the center here is the title page of the report, and the other images are various reports, past reports, and other data is available. So for the operation of this working group, we're open to anybody who wishes to help us in this process. If anybody is interested, see me at some point. But we need people to help with this report and to establish what the community's consensus is. We do this work by consensus. We try, we claim not to do this by fiat, but to say what does the community want, what are people actually doing, and try to standardize that and put it in writing. We have 18 members from 6 countries. As a representative of the IAU itself, we just last year became what's called a functional or a long-term working group, which seemed to make sense after 40 years that they realized we needed to continue to do this work. So we develop these things based on consensus. We don't have any resources other than the individual members like myself have funding from NASA grants or other types of funding or are involved with missions that help with this work. The recommendations are about mapping. There may be other uses like geophysical uses or dynamical or gravity field uses for this information. As in the name of the working group, it's cartographic coordinates. Maybe that name's going out of style, but that's the idea, to the ability to make maps and mapping products. So we don't deal with lower level formats like what format your file should be in or things like that, but certainly there's a need for that, and some people worked on that. And I list these other groups here, including, of course, the PDS, but International Planetary Data Alliance, various groups and missions and space agencies, standards in the past, including at these lower levels for format. And a list of members is there on your right. I will pause here for a moment to say that just generally, I won't go into detail on the slide, but just generally, there are many standards and recommendations that have been made by the IU since its creation back early after the turn of the 20th century. About planetary data that we still use day to day, whether we know it or not, including timekeeping, any of your data that is associated with time when you collect images for any raw data. Those time systems are established by the IU and recommendations they've made and other organizations have made. But the idea is to have common standards so that data is interchangeable, so that there aren't multiple naming conventions, so you're not reinventing the wheel, so that you can exchange data and superimpose and compare and register data. You're going to be doing all that blind, and every time you have a new product, it may be completely different from previous products. And there's a poster by Neil Gaither and others about planetary nomenclature here, but there's other things like the common asteroid names, constants, as I said, time, and other things. And all this is available to anybody who wants it. We're willing to certainly answer questions. Commission A3 on fundamental standards, other working groups help those standards, and we're available and willing to accept recommendations, and certainly willing to accept contributions and people joining in our work. So as to the main product, we make this report that comes out something like every 3 or 4 years. We make general recommendations that basically were established back in 1979 about coordinate systems for the planets, and earlier for that matter. There were IU resolutions back to the 1950s about planetary coordinates. Those general overall standards about latitude and longitude, the planetographic and planet-centric systems that were established for planets and satellites. And mainly the bulk of our report is coming up or looking at the literature derived as the best information for the orientation of bodies in the solar system, orientation models, and also the sizes and shapes, at least in terms of tracks, ellipsoids, and whatever. And so as much as possible, everything we do is based on peer-reviewed publications of others and trying to evaluate maybe which is the best of a few models. Haven't been able to evaluate it. We only say that multiple models are available. But for historical reasons, the planets and satellites were always treated separately. 2003 small bodies were treated as with a simple right-handed coordinate system rather than on north, south, and so on. So in the figures here. Part of this that often comes up and was really at the heart of the original discussions is how do you define longitude solar system? And the answer is that it is a definition, it's a convention. You can't just say that by some physical law this should be the longitude at a certain point on a body. That's just not possible. Mention that you have to define the starting point for your longitude, your prime meridian, whatever you want to call it. And so once you do that, the main point that the working group has made since 1979 is you don't want to change that. You may need to refine it and get more data, new data. You may get more accuracy, but you don't want to move the coordinate system around because that just confuses things. They try to process past data sets. So refinement is certainly possible, and there have been issues about how to do that in recent years that the working group has helped with, including the Moon, Mercury, the satellites Jupiter and Saturn. That's the fictitious series. Questions about how to establish longitude, and we tried to clarify some of that in the upcoming report. But there's no advantage to making multiple coordinate systems for the same body that we know of or that the community. Examples in the images here was in the 1970s. Meridian for Mars was established in the 1830s with telescopic observations on Cygnus Meridiani, and in the 1970s, Robert Davies and Gerald Binoculars and Harold Mazursky established using a tiny crater called Area Zero in the center of a larger crater Airy as the prime meridian for Mars, and that's about to change again, kept as the prime meridian, but we're making numerical changes to make that even more precise in the future. The situation occurred for Mercury, where the orientation system was determined dynamically from Mercury's orbit, but in the 1970s, the small crater Hunckel was degrees west longitude. So going on, the general changes for the current report that we're about to publish is to clarify this information about how you establish and refine coordinate systems. The fact that when you have a shape for a body, there are multiple purposes for shape. One is, for example, for doing map projections and scale of maps. Another is to project images to make ortho projections, and the third might be for geophysical reasons. So we're trying to clarify those different uses and different shapes that might be used. For example, in map projections, most use a spherical shape, whereas if you're projecting images on EO, you probably want to use a triaxial ellipsoid to get the best possible projection. Clarify that the planetographic and planet-centric systems that only apply to the planets and satellites and not the new small bodies or other bodies, including dwarf planets. Clarify at least the usage as we understand it of cardinal directions in the solar system, so that even if you have a positive pole, the right-handed pole of a body, that people have started to call that the North Pole, whether it's actually above or below the ecliptic or not. That seems to be the usage developed for Pluto and for other bodies like in the solar system. Identifying or establishing that that seems to be the case. There are a number of changes listed here. I won't go over every one of these. Significant ones include Mercury and Mars, no real changes for the Moon, and I'll talk separately here for a moment about Mars and the Moon. We're establishing that there are different uses for shapes, particularly for Titan, where the best possible shape is not a sphere, but it's within a kilometer or so, so people of the Cassini mission and others sphere for the reference shape of Titan. Other bodies for orientation, changes are being made to drop the Earth's orientation model because it's not very precise. And the International Earth Rotation and Reference Service provides a regular service of establishing the Earth's orientation. For Eric Markochka, the University of Arizona, for Neptune's orientation is much improved with new processing of HST data from Neptune. Pluto and Chum, there was actually an error that we made in our previous report that we corrected. There won't be any changes probably from the New Horizons mission. It didn't last long enough to particularly improve the orientation of Pluto or Charon. There are improvements in the rotation models due to flybys or orbiting spacecraft like Dawn and Rosetta, Zesta, Europa, and Steins. And particularly due to work from Mike Ahern, we've established models for several comets, at least during the approaches and flybys of various comet missions. As to size, a separate group in the IAU has established a new of all things, and we at least record that in our report, even though nobody usually maps the sun, but the information is there for people to use. There's work from Peter Thomas and others at Cornell on the size of 14 small Saturnian satellites from Cassini data, new values for Pluto and Charon from New Horizons, several asteroids, and a correction to the size of the Apollo, where we diameter instead of the radius. So it's only twice the size that it should be in our previous reports. So in two objects in a little bit more detail is the orientation for Mars, and maybe the most important change that we plan to make is to have a new orientation model for Mars recommended from Alex Conflin and others at JPL. They've done several models over the years, but this is a big improvement over the original 2000 with. And this is based on many more years of data, of course, 17 years of data since the 2000 model, the gravity field that was also solved for. Part of this process was also coming up with a refinement in Mars longitude system. Instead of saying that we'd use the center of the crater area 0 as 0 degrees, we've chosen by derivation to fix the coordinates of the Viking 1 lander. knowing where the longitude is, as well as you determine the center of a 500-meter crater on Mars at the scale of the size of the Viking 1 lander. So we're not changing the coordinate system, we're not rotating it, we're not moving it, but we're redefining it slightly so that it can be done more precisely in the future. Changes, so the other one minor problem with this is that series expansion made for this data is available from date, and we have to make sure that it's published eventually separately. But all of this results in a substantial improvement over the model from some 17 years ago. So the plots there on the center right show the kind of level we're talking about, periodic sinusoidal changes from anywhere from 10 to 20 meters over 10 years. Down the high-rise image from 2006 with the high-rise image from 2017, 16-meter difference in the position just based on the orientation model precision. So we certainly want to update it to eliminate that kind of uncertainty. And as I say, this will result in changes for many missions, especially when you're taking far harder time. We're not actually establishing any changes right now. There may be a new recommendation or a separate report that we'll issue soon. But basically, we know that an improved lunar ephemeris, the DE430, is available. But we also have been told that a new one may come out soon. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to make changes. That the changes are becoming no longer significant with the lunar ephemeris. Went from one ephemeris to the other in the mean Earth polar axis system, 1 or 2 meters. So you're not actually going to see much effect in changing from one ephemeris to another. You simply need to standardize on one, and that's been done on one ephemeris, which is still the standard ephemeris, for example, for the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. But there may be a new ephemeris coming soon, so we'll see what happens. An opportunity to use alternate ephemeris from the French IMPOP consortium, and also the possibility of, instead of defining the moon's orientation entirely from an ephemeris coordinate system with the lunar laser engine, 5 retroreflectors left on the moon, whose positions are known to about the 5-centimeter level on the lunar surface. So for the later reports, the other things could happen like this on Mars, that we might, instead of just using only the Viking 1 lander, use the eventual InSight lander and other landers, which will all have high accuracy positions determined by VLBI to define the coordinate system for Mars. Just as on the Earth, the coordinate system, the longitude system, is defined by a few hundred space geodetic observing platforms on the surface of the Earth. Become true on Mars with multiple platforms being the multiple landers. The working group, although it doesn't do any mapping of Jupiter and Saturn, is also responsible for the orientation models for them, to improve with results for Jupiter from the Juno mission and results from Cassini for the final part of the mission as it goes and gets improved orientation information. Again, from the various missions, terrestrial observations of asteroids where the asteroids are resolved, or the Keck telescopes, or the Large Binocular Telescope in Arizona, good maps and imaging and shape models made of asteroids now. We also need to consult within the IU about whether to extend these types of coordinate system standards beyond the solar system to exoplanets. From 10 years ago, there's already a map of an exoplanet, a thermal temperature map being made for bodies in orbit around other suns. And we also intend to keep working with the community, establishing links to some of the other international organizations, and also providing assistance where we can on coordinate system issues. We particularly look forward to working with the new issue of standards. So that's about it. The main point I'd like to make is we're trying to get our working group report out in a matter of weeks or a month or so for the next version. But the working group itself has finally become a quasi-permanent working group rather than one that has to justify itself every 3 years. Have clarified how to define and refine longitude. We've differentiated between different types of shapes and different uses for shapes of bodies. We're planning to recommend updating the Mars orientation model, recommendations for orientations and shapes for many bodies. So again, we do welcome any input to the working group, and particularly we welcome anybody who wishes to to our work. So thanks for your attention.
We have 18 minutes for questions.
Sure somebody has-
Chase, Million Concepts. What does membership in the working group look like in terms of effort and types of tasks?
The main effort the work group does is to turn out this report. So we really like people who are willing to help actually make recommendations and changes in the actual text of the report. People who watch out for papers or reports from others on new results, so we know when the model should be updated. And also people who are involved with missions who wish to, are approaching the IU recommendations and following them and related work like that. As well as we often have assisted in helping the PDS in reviewing submissions to the PDS and helping journal editors by reviewing journal papers. So it's that type of effort, and it's a level of effort thing that we don't have to necessarily do a lot, but of course, the more you do, the more it helps the working group at some level. Right?
I have a page of notes here. So, let's see. So when you said to go graphic, what can you clarify what that means?
The 2003 report, but after a lot of consultation in the community, it was decided that small bodies wouldn't the system for planets and satellites, that they would simply use a right-handed coordinate system. Right-handed coordinate system that isn't planet graphic, it isn't by definition planet-centric. And longitudes and latitudes that may be ocentric or odetic. In other words, you still may assign a shape to a small body if you wish. You still may calculate theta coordinates. Planetographic or planet-centric anymore. Is that clear? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, as we go down this road of trying to fix the mess that Mars is right now with ocentric and different radii, there's an impetus on the left, right? Before we get too far down the ESKs and everything.
Well, that was the feeling, although as I understand it, the main reason that people wanted to switch to a right-handed system was because there are bodies whose pull could flip back and forth above and below the ecliptic. The coordinate system would reverse every time they did it to establish that things are right-handed. And a lot of geophysicists and a lot of mission operations people simply said they wanted a right-handed coordinate system. And that corresponds in general to, for example, east longitude on the Earth, which is a right-handed coordinate system. So people are familiar with it.
So, and I know this is still under discussion, but when you have a body that has tubes at the same location, is that when we go to straight XYZ system?
Oh, you're talking about multi-value objects. So if you have an object which is sometimes called, what's the word, obscured or anyway, radii passes through the body more than once, such as Eros or Itokawa, you need to, yes, use XYZ coordinates perhaps as an alternative, but the real issue is when you build a shape model, you actually have to associate locations on the object with nearby locations. You have to do something like a triangular network akin so that you know where adjacent points are. Otherwise, if you simply list latitude and longitude, or you simply list X, Y, and Z, you don't have any information on what the shape of the surface of the body is. So just going to X, Y, Z doesn't solve a problem in use, but the real issue is you have to have a definition of a surface rather than just a set of points.
For my second question. So you said we now define Mars at IP. Zero not change.
So several people, including Tim Parker and Randy Kirk, maybe here and others, the mapping between the Viking 1 lander and Area 0. The desired longitude would be at the Viking 1 lander, keeping Area 0 at 0 degrees longitude. And that's the value that was chosen a few years ago by other workers, but then also by Conniff and others, Viking 1 lander. And again, the center of Area 0 is still at 0 degrees by all current measurements. But that's a very hard measurement to make at better than about maybe 20 degrees, 20 meters, 50 meters accuracy. But now we have a fixed coordinate system that should be good to the size of, I think, one lander or less, 1 or 2 meters. So we're making sure we have more precision for the longitude system of Mars. We're not changing the longitude system of Mars.
Because of the uncertainty at even area 0, you can't recommend that high rise say shift 40 meters to the west, because we just don't know.
No, I'm not quite sure whether.
You said that high rise may not be accurately located to
Right.
the system.
If you use current SPICE data, 2000 orientation for Mars, a certain location in from 2006, and you lay down an image in that same location in 2017, the coordinates may change by about 50 meters, even though the spot on Mars is exactly the same. So my point is that this improved model will let you register the data sets with a priori information better than is being done now. Okay?
Any other questions, folks?
So now we need a 15-minute question?
Aren't you guys in the same building?
Yes.
So I think we're on break till 3:15. At 3:15, we'll continue the session in here, and there'll be a breakout with prison demos in the Agassiz room, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so as far as that still remaining spot, well, we did figure out that there is a but that's what we
Yeah, no, I'm saying if I try to pull it just for now as images, they're often yeah. So I was thinking, how do I know for which is just fails because of as you just said, or because of working in position of how do I, can I force ISIS to use other programs? And when do I get this new cover? Of course it's great. Then it's something that was a good
The other issue you should think so they've got very good but overall, the biggest concern is always the model right now is contributing greater. Yeah, of course, you could get one low and the next low, and different language. You go from one low to the next.
I mean, my last question was I was trying to get why can you have there's no way to generate like we did with
Yeah. You could do a series of different Mars at a given time.
would that be useful?
Well, to let people visualize what the maximum difference is, yeah, I mean,
there would no way to be more careful.
I mean, you could look at, for example, you could take MRO and say, date of first observation is 2006, current date, and show what the maximum over that range is, and then plot it for all of them.
That could be, see if it's in the highland or if it's.
Because there's an error in the pool as well as the longitude. So some areas will cancel out to 0, in other areas there'll be a maximum of 56 kilometers. So, in my right, there's several instruments that have less than 3 years resolution, so it'll affect all of those. My right, even in Torsi, in some cases, light data, it's 7-meter resolution light. And now they get different is plotting 7-meter resolution light data, 7-meter resolution CDEC data, and it's 40 years later. So it's 40 years
It was never
Some of the you'd have to adjust.
Yeah,
Truth, right? Yeah. So someone will talk about this, they're gonna ask how to best take a band of prism and have it automatically match to HRC. So you auto type a single prism band to HRC. I was like,
maybe the same feature finder from ISIS could do.
I guess if they're spectrally enough.
Yeah, you have to have a edge finding, right? Yes, an edge.
Similar algorithm, similar way to it's not so much in the colors,
Especially if she wants to go ahead.
so yeah, getting bigger illumination kill
But of course, if the illumination angle is actually different, then actually the real apparent position of edges changes, which means the edge finder would only be precise up to a certain level.
Yeah.
So, because the edge actually apparently is somewhere else when the shadow is from the other side.
So, and I remember when the issue he abandoned the edge. He was going for full shadow break.
Okay.
Trying to figure out not just the edge, but whether I best fit that on the magic ray ring. He wasn't successful. He was trying to
Yeah. That must be the reason why automatic radar finding still doesn't work. Like, it's just too difficult.
There's a lot of reasons why automatic grid still doesn't work.
I need to go make sure they're set up. Sure. Oh, yeah. It's gonna go in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so try to figure out how to see.
Oh.
I don't hear pressing B to have. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. It's a general announcement. Some workshop. So we'll start in a few minutes and we're going to go around the corner. Anytime anybody's up to come by and listen in or play along if you have MD radio, any idea what's on your laptop. Thank you.
I forgot. And I just thought you
Yeah, I figured.
Yes. Just touching base. Yes, exactly. So you're
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with this afternoon's session. So the first talk of the session is what's new in spines. Presenter is
Hello, my name is Masha Lucas, and I'm a new member of the NAIC team, and I will be presenting new and extended capabilities of the latest version of the SPICE tool. So the latest SPICE toolkit N66 has been released in April 2017, and as a previous version of the toolkit is implemented in Fortran 77 and MATLAB. Toolkits are available from the NAIC website along with alpha test which is a Java native interface. This is implemented by others, and I expect it to be updated to the N66 toolkit. And actually received the news from Andrew Annex Group saying that the CPI version 2.0 has been released and has been updated to the N66 toolkit and include support for the format. So one of the major new N66 capabilities is the tessellated plate portion of the digital shape kernel, which provides high precision shape models of irregularly shaped bodies. Plate model is the only supported data type DSK subsystem right now. It models shapes of objects and collections of triangular plates, and such shape representations are also called tessellated plate models or triangular regular networks. Such models were produced by both United States and European missions. A couple of examples of such visualizations of Cherenkov-Gerasimenko DSK model, which consists of over 4 million plates, and down-tested DSK model, which is consists of over 3 million plates. Digital shape kernel subsystem enables SPICE applications to access detailed representations of shapes of extended objects and use that shape data conveniently in geometry calculations. So all DSK capabilities are fully integrated into the SPICE toolkit, and the official version of the DSK, which is a part of the latest SPICE toolkit, provides more functionality, more thorough testing, and more thorough documentation as compared to the previous alpha test version, which has been available in the SPICE toolkit for the last couple of years. N66 retains all alpha test APIs of the digital shape kernel subsystem for backwards compatibility. The DSK subsystem provides new utility program that enables users to make DSK files from a variety of commonly used, such as plate vertex table, Gaskell shape model, vertex phosphate table. So this utility is the make DSK. Along with that, we also provide a DSK export. It's a utility for exporting DSK data into common text 3D shape formats. Information about the digital shape subkernel, digital shape kernel subsystem is the poster by Nat Bachman, will be presented later today. Part of the N66 toolkit added in support of the new DSK. So various types of observational geometry are available to be computed and station of the link point, terminator points, mapping of the planetocentric latitude, longitude grid to the surface point on the target body, normal vectors, and also ray surface intercepts. SPICE high-level geometry routines have also been updated to support DSK, as well as and updated routines are allowed to compute ray surface intercept, sub-observer point, sub-solar point, station angles, and a couple of routines for the rotation calculations. Also, many new IC and MICE wrappers were added to the toolkit, and those are the implementation of the SPICE and NAPLA. And the SPK type has been updated to use high precision reliable algorithms. Well, along with preparing the latest SPICE toolkit version, there also was some work done on two toolkits. The web geocalc tool, which is a web-based graphical user interface to a SPICE geometry engine. It allows to make many kinds of geometry computations without having to write any code. Access to a large collection of SPICE kernels and is currently being updated to work with the SK-shaped models. And the tool is also available from the NAIF website. So here is the main web geocalc menu, which shows what kind of computations are available. So you can see a number of geometry calculations and geometric event fiber calculations along with the time calculator. Another tool which we've been working on is the Cosmographia, and it's a SPICE enhanced tool. And right now we are working on modernization of infrastructure and also making changes to some time controls and interface. Just like Web GeoCal, it's also available from the NAIF website. So here are a couple of screenshots of the Cosmographia, which demonstrates that the tool is able to show frames, instrument field of view, also able to display 3D models of spacecraft, model natural bodies as 3D shapes with texture mapping, and just to mention that the rendering is very accurate and with no approximations. We're also able to produce movies in Cosmographia. So this particular short movie is Cassini imaging with Saturn. Well, for more information, please see one of our posters. It's a Web GeoCalc and Cosmographia, modern tools to access SPICE archives by Boris Cinema. And also, please stop by tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. For the demonstrations of the both tools. Planning on adding additional geometry finder. I also recommend to stop by poster the SPICE geometry by Ed Wright. Talk about current capabilities. We are about to embark on a new task, and it's a complete rewrite of in C++. Oriented design and support for concurrency. For performance improvement, we plan on supporting all existing SPICE kernel types and possibly introducing new ones. To be a 2 to 3 year development. But just to make also all our current users for sure that we will continue support for all existing ones. For a data type that is planned for the release in the future. Domestic SPICE beginners training class is planned for an event near Pasadena, March our announcement page for further details.
A few minutes for questions.
Just because people ask me sometimes, do you have a date or a tentative date for the new cosmography release?
I will call Spice Voice to the rescue and answer the question.
So at the moment, we do not have a date, but we're working with the regional cosmography author, Chris Laurel, to structure and add some minor features to it. It's been progressing really well, and we're hoping that which really will not have any capability that's drastically different from the current will be available in the 3 months.
And so our next talk is the Planetary Science Archive approach to enhance visibility of ESA's space science data. And it's given by
So since this morning, I heard a lot about like a lot of new missions and instruments, and we heard a lot PDS, and PSA. On the other side of the pound, we're also doing archiving of the data. We put them available for the public for the ESA missions. Version of what it is and what we're currently working on to improve some usage and needs for the community. So ESA Planetary Science Archive is the repository for the ESA missions system. Contains science as well as engineering and housekeeping data, and we use to be as much as possible in compliance and interoperable with the other partners. To provide access to the missions and the data for decades to the public. So this is the same core statement as PDS. We're here to save the data for a long period of time. To improve how we provide access and the functionalities for the data. The data, the missions that we provide support to and the missions available in the PSA archive. I mean, specific like Rosetta because it's also available at the PDS node because it's a joint effort in archiving. Some of them are only accessible at the ESA Planetary Science Archive, so don't hesitate to go there. It's important if you want to have access to some data of these missions. We currently have 10 missions in our archive, half of them in legacy or in post-operation, lastest one being Rosetta, which is currently, and we have like 5 projects in development. So Mars is working, Mars Express still orbiting, and Delphi Colombo is about to be launched next year, and following also ExoMars RSP and JUICE. So we're half the past and half the future. We have about 76 instruments in our archive, which include in situ and remote sensing instruments. Missions here in development will come up. We'll have like 14 new instruments to add to the 76, so I'll probably, when I will resign, and give my job to someone else because that will be too much complicated at that stage. So if you're interested, keep that in mind. We have about like 45 terabytes of data with 11 million products. The key difference here with respect to the PDS, the data is like all is in one spot. So everything we put everything in the same place here. That for sure something that we learned over the years. 8 million products only for Rosetta, which have been so far the main providers for the archive itself. So the main challenges that we have is at the same time, we want to be and remain a multi-mission archive. For instance, you would be interested in compiling products from the ExoMars mission and the Mars Express mission. A multi-instruments archive, so you might want to combine and search for different instruments looking at the same target. A completely different field, a remote sensing instrument. on Rosetta, for instance, will be probably archived in different ways at NASA with different nodes. But here we put all of them here in the same place. So we really want to be a multi-instrument archive. And we're also now trying to be a multi-target archive because some instruments have observed different targets along the cruise phase. And that's particularly true for Rosetta and the long cruise phase we have. So we are one node, one place for all ESA planetary missions archives. So that makes your life a bit more simple. Here is how it looks like. This is the web page of the PSA, psa.esa.int. I actually didn't put that anywhere, so maybe I'll put it. This is the home page. You can go there. You have like a search bar. You search your instruments, your missions, your target to select what you want. We also provide in here all the information needed for everything that is related to the data, documentations. We have workshops. We also organize the SPICE workshops sometimes in Madrid area as well. Access to the data in terms of you can see the data, you can look at some metadata, be sure that this is what you're interested in, and download it. So there are some criteria on the side that you can select for the data, missions, target, time, processing level. We highlight those products when they're available, which is not always the case. And then you will download the data, and then it will look like a PDF structure format, and you'll get everything you need and everything you asked for. The interface for that, as well as machine access interface. Click on buttons you prefer to write your code, so you can also do these parts for the community. And one thing that I would like to focus a bit here, it's a bit more relevant during this meeting, is also at the same time we try to offer the best tools and functionalities to enhance the science exploitation of the data. This is one of the core things we're trying to work, is make sure that we get as much science as we can out of the data that we have. The good data that we got from Rosetta, I mean, people from the Rosetta instruments use the Giotto data to actually redo science with the Giotto data. So we need to provide a way for you, for the science community, to access the data in a better way. What we lack is the projection of products on the surface and the availability of reference products, reference in terms of latitude GIS products. We don't have that, and we really want to work on this aspect. These cover large fractions of the data we have in the archives. I mean, more than half of the data are from remote sensing instruments, and you'll be able to project that on the surface. So we're really working on trying to improve our capabilities with that. So how do we go from the science products in the archive to their projection on the surface? And that's what I would like to show you a bit. So the short answer is no, we do not, because we don't do it yet. Is that we have a plan and we're working on it. And then you want. So I'll give you some goals at the end. We'll see if we can maintain that. But this is really hard work, and this is the prototype we're working on, where you have the surface of Mars. Your HRSC images are projected on the surface, and you can query them, you can have access to them, and hopefully soon we'll be able to compare that with the CASIS image from the ExoMars orbiter. We have some difficulty and issues because we're different from what PDS, what NASA missions are used to. The instrument team do not deliver the same geometrical information. Sometimes they deliver absolutely nothing. So you don't have a single thing from geometry in it. Sometimes there are different things. The main difference is we don't have like the Spice Boys. It doesn't exist. We have actually one guy, it's an Iron Man. And it's really an Iron Man. I'll have to learn about that in the next years. So not organized in the same way in terms of funding, in terms of how they evolve, in terms of how you deliver the data. So we're trying to, where we can control a geometrical pipeline where we're actually going to calibrate the data in terms of geometry ourselves and provide that to the scientific community in the interface. And when I was at the LPSC conference last year, I had a lot of chance to discuss with Trent here about this aspect. And it sounds very similar to what they're doing at the USGS, which is going from SPICE to the camera model and to the projections. Only doing camera, we're trying to do other kind of data. Mass spectrometers, some in-situ instruments. You can find some way to do some geometrical information useful for. So here is, in terms of like a few schematics, the plan that we're working on, and we're trying to develop this hopefully by the end of a bit more. We have the SPICE service represented by Mark Costa, which will give you a talk just after me. They provide kernels, IK kernels, AK, SPK kernels, and from that, we also have from the mission itself instrument teams that delivers the data to the PSA. They're science-ready products. That's PDS is doing it. So we have a database of the scientific project and we have the kernels. Extract the time of the products itself from the database, and we're going to use the kernels to get the pointing, the trajectory, and all these. What we call these B3F files, body fixed point Prussian, where we have the sun direction, the spacecraft directions, and kind of the corners of the instruments, or how the science team have defined their instrument. Geometry, we then later on input the shape model in it. We have a geometry computator. We're using really aggressive, because we learned that from the NASA and PDS. Having this kind of name helps to get funding. So it's a computator. It's really big. That is going to take all of these inputs and create the geometry files like every science needs the data. Phase angle, longitude, distance, local time, those are the easy ones. But over the years, at our archives, we collected about like 40 different geometrical parameters that the teams need. So we're going to create that. The awesome part, but not the one, is to feed that back in the database itself so that it's available in the user interface and you can search your data based on the geometrical criteria that you want. Plan of how we will work on this. The key part is to have the kernels in a really good shape, so that you can really use them to extract data that you want. But the main key point is to have the data in the archive, and this is also something that we have to work on, to focus on getting in the archive. We believe it's a good approach. We've been working on this in the past weeks and months. There were some cons, but the pros is that the pointing and the trajectory are treated independently from the product's updates from the product. So if you update the SPICE kernels, there's no problem because the SPICE kernels, the geometry and data are separate. So because you change it, that's not a problem. The geometry is not taken from the dataset itself. We're not looking into the labels and the delivery of the teams of the geometry parameters that they provided. An update of these datasets, this will be transparent for us because we created geometry aside from it. The B3F files, they are created independently from the shape model. So the reference frame is used independently of the shape model. Then later on, you input the shape model to make a projection of the surface. This approach is a key point specifically for a mission like Rosetta. Because how you define the local geometry of a phase angle of a facet on the comet and after period is not the same things. I mean, you've seen some papers in the literature about the changes that you see on the comet. The shape model has changed significantly. So if you provide the geometry for part of the comet, someone might be interested in the same value, but at the beginning of the mission. So by doing with this approach, we will input the shape model that you want later on, and then we can calculate the geometrical parameters at the time you need. And if you take the two of them, maybe you can compare what's going on between this period of time. And the parameters will be independent to the projection size so that we can offer multiple projections to the users. Something that's not going to be easy to do. This is more as a wish list. We're going to have this aspect. You'll be able to select some of the major projections that you'd like to have your parameters in, and you'll get access to this. That we have ideas but no resources for that. So it's going to take a bit of time to do this. The idea, we need to test it, we need to implement it, and so we hope that within a year or two we'll be able to provide that to you. We'll have some really bad surprises that always happen in advance, but your patience on that is greatly appreciated. So summarizing in a few points, what I want to mention to you is that we were preparing a prototype to develop this concept of platform SPICE to the camera data and to the projection and searching your data available on the PSA. And we improve the data you want to look at and how long it's going to take you to search for that. We will increase the science usage of the data. We hope to get something in 2018, summer 2018 is a good goal. In the meantime, you can still go. I mean, the archive is available for other purposes. You don't have to wait for that. You can go before this. And what we aim for is to have one generic tool to get access to the multiple data available in planetary science at ESA. One address, different way of looking for the data. Table, list, map view, search parameters, doesn't matter, whatever you want. Thank you.
those are dynamically generated, or do you generate them? You have to regenerate them?
We're probably going to have to regenerate that. Having that dynamically is very when you have a user interface. So we're probably going to compute everything, and every time things will change, we'll just recalculate and regenerate the text.
Next talk is entitled Building Unique Scenarios for Cross-Mission Science with SPICE, the Citing Spring Comment and Counter Reforms. And the presenter,
That's a long name. Sorry about that. So, yeah, a bit short for an Ironman, right? But, so continuing, let's say, the path that Justin has just started. So I think that this slide is a bit insulting to intelligence because we're in a session in which I don't think that SPICE needs to be introduced at all, and we already have had just a presentation about that, so I'm just going to skip it. I don't want to skip this. Actually, I have a poster outside, so I'll be there in the poster session. And I was kind of hoping for that poster to be the presentation and the other way around. But I'm going to take the chance and extend myself a little bit on this. So we now have, actually it's been there for a year, SPICE service at ESA. It's me. For the time being. And basically, well, we are leading the SPICE operation facility for these missions, and of course, my main responsibility is the generation of SPICE data for all the planetary missions and also for solar orbit. That also includes missions in the legacy phase, such as User Express, and in operations like Light. I also develop software pipelines to automatically generate that data that is generated from the inputs from different sources such as flight dynamics, housekeeping telemetry, and so on. And well, I also provide consultancy and support to the different science ground segments and also to the science community. So here I am. There's a point of view.
The ring.
Middle
ring.
Middle. So, yeah, you've got this site. It's very easy. Also, if you just Google, probably find it. And and also we have an FTP where we host all the operational kernel datasets. You can also contact me. My contact also pops up very easily in the site. And I'm also in the Open Planetary Slack community. There's a SPICE channel, and I'm around, so it's quite a convenient environment to sometimes more agile than emails themselves to solve questions, issues, or whatsoever. Just a little overview of like kind of a heat map of what is the current status of the kernel datasets at ESA. Well, we basically have host like NIDA's kernels of two natures. First of all, we have the so-called operational kernels. They are whose used in a periodical basis by pipelines. Therefore, they are not kind of peer-reviewed. And then we have the kernels archived in the PSA, basically they go through the reviewing processes as the rest of the data that is ingested in the BSA and so on. It's also important. Well, so basically the operational ones are the ones that you will find in the FTP that I mentioned before, and the other ones are basically hosted in the BSA server and in the NAS server as well. It's also important to distinguish in between three different status of kernel datasets. The first one is the one that I call the pre-operational one, let's say, or the status one. Those datasets are currently available for Bepi Colombo, JUICE, and Solar Orbiter, although they have a different policy on what has to be made public. And those datasets, as I mentioned, for Solar Orbiter, are already available in our FTP. But since they are in study phase, they are very, very dynamic. We maintain a version control, we do releases, there's mailing lists that you can subscribe to if you wish. I mean is that those are very dynamic kernel datasets at this moment. Those are meant to be archived in PDS4 formats in the future when they are in operations. Then we have the missions in operations that, as Sebastian mentioned, are ExoMars 2016 and Mars Express at the moment. And those kernel datasets are much more consolidated, although you might have been able to see or to suffer that the archived instances are quite out of date. But if you check the ones which are in the operational FTP server, they are, and so on. So I'm working on having for Santa Mars Express and Express and so on. Okay, so going on and now going into the main topic of the presentation. I don't know if you in October 2014, Mars experienced a close encounter with Comet Sighting Spring. The closest approach took place in was 19th of October 2014, and the distance was 138,000 kilometers. So that's more or less 1/3 of the distance from. Basically, this gives a unique chance. Actually, this type of encounter is predicted only once in, well, that's what I, 100,000 years. And it's a rare occasion to be able to see the interaction of the comet with Mars upper atmosphere. So in this context, basically, there's an initiative coming from ESTEC in this side, from one of the project scientists from Olivier Vitas, to perform a study using these different data sets that come from three different missions. From Mars Express, mainly from Marsy's DFS data, from MRO, and from AIM. The idea is that we needed to build up a scenario in which we would have the available for the three spacecraft and the comet at once. And that's what I took. Well, that's basically where I was contacted. By the way, the results of these studies will be presented, or at least the status will be presented at a special session that will take place in the BSC this year. I'll be there as well, probably. And basically, my task was to prepare a spice kernel data set, a scenario, in order to reproduce this context. And also, I provided configuration for cosmography and for a web geographic instance of this scenario. I will not go into the details. There are several sessions covering during the workshop. Let's keep going tomorrow. We have them as well from works. Basically, in this scenario, I put together was the appropriate spice kernels for the three missions, and for Sighting Spring as well. And some modeling has been done in terms of additional frames defined and some other configuration things. we included three different frames for Sonic Spring that I was requested to implement. And we also included some models such as an inner comma model and an outer comma model with those characteristics. The most important thing, and the thing that I would like to put more stress on, especially for those who work with data for European missions, are metakernels. Okay, so far we have not had, let's say, series of metakernels with the SPICE datasets. Historically, we have not done that. Now that is changing, and there's quite an effort being put on providing the metakernel with the SPICE dataset, and I'm trying to convince the users to use it, because most of the questions that I get by loading the appropriate kernels. Just what I wanted to show here is that that I had to load to get the 3 missions. This covers an extended period. This is not only for the surroundings of the closest encounter. This is a thing that I basically from September until the end of the year. And this is the list of kernels. One has to be very careful with the data and the most important thing, knowing which data you have to load, is that you have to make sure that when you do have different actors doing science with the same, let's say, for the same observations, that they have to use the same to have coherent results. In here, just basically this was based using Mars Express some generic there. This was for Maven, this was for MRO, and well, we also have the SPK for Sonic Spring. What I did, because let's say that was my contribution to this project, because I might be an Ironman, but I'm not a scientist. Okay, I'm just an engineer. I just have a master. Basically, I looked into it, and there were dedicated observations from VFS and from Marsis during the Sonic Spring. The people that work at the next scientific segment, actually, I do work with them, and they are next door. And asking, hey, when did the observations occur? What was the type of quantity that you implement? Can you even share me those files with me? What I did is that I did what this scenario that I built was meant, which is that I just graph from there, and also I could have also used some abilities of SPICE or even GeoGov itself. And I found the list of observations that took place, at least the ones that had dedicated pointing. And then the other thing that I did was to look into the VSA user interface, and I queried for the data that was available during time windows. And well, I just found that the following data is available. As I mentioned before, I'm not a scientist, so I was a bit sad not to see any kind of nice image, even if it only was a pixel that I could see. So there was no HRC images and so on. So the only thing that I found was this, and I don't see a comment. So since I want to be a bit more visual, and as I mentioned, I was really hoping for this to be a poster. What I did was basically on how can you exploit cosmography, for instance, for such scenarios. So in this case, what you see here is the Sonic Spring direction. This is the VFS field of view. There. This is a live observation, and then we're probably calibrating with the star. This is Sonic Spring. This is a very coarse model of the two commas of the comet. So with this, you can already see visualize the data that you're analyzing. This is another video which will show you another context. So we have Maven here, we have MRO. Next, again, we have the BFS field of view frustum, and here we have Silent Spring. Here you can also see which is the, let's say, the overall context of this scenario. Another one, I mentioned to you before that we have kind of modeled the of the coma. There were two spheres. There's an inner one, and then there's an outer one. You can also see here is how the model of the coma wipes the system. So in here we have three spacecrafts. That would be the inner one, and this is the outer one. So that's the kind of things that you can evaluate. And of course, then when you have kernel data set available in a tool such as cosmography or for your applications with the toolkit, and you have across the different actors analyzing this scenario, this can be really helpful. Let's say that the reach of this help is out of my understanding in terms of science. Basically, that here was for me to build up this scenario, provide it to studying this data, and stress once again that it's paramount to make sure that you load the appropriate data, and that and that you do. I mean, and basically that you are coherent with what the rest of people that you're working with is loading. Now, for naive, this might be already true. Simple archive, the kernel datasets that are archived. They have the meta-kernels available, and they are mostly up to date. But this was not the case for our missions, and effort is being put in that direction. And well, basically, also kind of a proof of concept for which scenarios we can improve the collaboration between missions when they are studying the same body. And for us, the canonical example will be ExoMars, with Sebastian mentioned before as well. That's everything I have to say. As I mentioned, for side results, more to come at the end. So thank you for your attention.
We have time for one quick question.
All right, so up next we have precision pointing reconstruction and geometric metadata generation for the CD images. And the presenter.
Well, we had all these ESA talks, so
it's a good one.
okay, everybody hear me okay? All right, so today I'd like to talk to you about a project that we've been working on for the last 3 years or so to produce a new collection of metadata for all of the Cassini images. Boring, scientific sounding title, but I'm going to try to make the talk a little more interesting than that with lots of pretty pictures. Finally, we're trying to answer the big question that pretty much every scientist needs to answer when they're doing research. And that is, when you have an image, and in particular for every pixel in this image, so you may be asking a very simple question like, is this Saturn? You may be asking, there's this dot over here in this corner. Is that a moon? Is that a star? Is Saturn? You may wonder things about the body. For example, you might want to know the illumination, the viewing geometry. You might want to know the latitude and longitude on the body and various coordinate systems, planocentric, planographic, whatever. You may care about the rings, like I do. I'm a rings researcher. You may want to know about the radius, longitude, lighting, and viewing geometry of the rings. Or you may care about just every pixel in the image in general. Like, for example, what's the right ascension and declination for every pixel? Now, you may be saying to yourself, we already have the technology to produce all of this because we have SPICE, right? And we use the SPICE kernels and the SPICE routines as the underlying technology for what we do. But SPICE is a tremendously capable and complex system to learning curve. And I think your average scientist would rather not spend their time learning how to use that toolkit, but would instead rather just have the results handed to them so they can get on with their research. What our project is all about. Our end product is a series of what we call backplanes. So for every Cassini ISS image, so for example, here's one of this. There, is that better? Okay, we want to be able to produce a series of backplanes. So for example, here's longitude, latitude, viewing and illumination geometry. 120 different types of backplanes that we're producing. If you ever care about, we're going to be producing for you. It's available through the PDF system so that you can simply download it along with the mission data. I'm going to stop right there. There's the end of the talk. That's the punchline. That's what we're producing, except that I have another talk, so I can fill up some other things. So fundamentally, of course, if you could do this so easily, we wouldn't. So everybody knows about it. When you use the SPICE kernels, they're not as accurate as you would like them to be. Here is the same moon image that I just showed you a minute ago. Computed the backplane using the SPICE reconstructed kernels thinks the moon is in the image. It's not really going to be very great for your science work. So, and re-navigate so that we know at a single pixel accuracy where everything is in the image. So how big a problem is this? Well, I'm going to give you an example based on rings, because I'm a rings researcher. Observations that are called F movies. Basically, you have the F ring around Saturn. Cassini is able to stare at one inertial longitude in space. Planet, it very slowly rotates to keep that one place in space in its field of view. Of images that were taken of the F ring over about a 10-hour period. These images are maybe 5–10 minutes apart. And the pointing should not change very much because you're just looking at one point in space. But this is what actually happens. X-axis, image y-axis, reconstructed kernels say you're pointing. The rings actually are. This is the number of pixels off you are per image. And that you're much better than I am. We cannot use anything to predict what the next image's position error is going to be. We have to re-navigate each one of them independently. And you can see here that some of the errors get up to 50 pixels. I have found images that are 150 pixels off in the reconstructed kernels. The second thing that we have to do is we have to re-navigate all the kernels. And fundamentally, all the images, and fundamentally the way we do that is that we know what's supposed to be in each one of these images. So we create a fake model, and then we basically overlay it on top of the image, do a 2D correlation, line up the best. Stars, we can navigate using Saturn, icy moons, Titan, and in the end, in addition to producing all of those backplanes, we want to produce a new set of so that if you want to use SPICE yourself, you will have accurate pointing information in all of our time. So now I'm going to talk about how to do these various different types of navigation. So stars you would think would be pretty easy, but it turns out to be more complicated than you might think. FACT4 star catalog from the US Naval Observatory, which has about 113 million stars in it, although for some reason that I do not understand, it does not include any of the bright stars. So that was a surprise to me. Like Vega is not in it, for example. So we had to merge it with the Yale Bright Star catalog to get the bright stars. Yale Bright Star catalog doesn't have any of the dim stars. Produce the model that has basically little PSF dots for each one of the stars, and you correlate it with the image. Did it actually work? Because if I give you a model that has in it, it's going to correlate with any image that I give you. It's going to correlate with some crater on some moon or some feature in a ring or something, right? It'll correlate somewhere. How do you know it's actually the stars you're looking at? And so we have to do aperture photometry on the results in order to see whether the navigation is actually correct or not. We have to look at the type of star, its temperature, its color. We have to predict its spectrum. We have to convolve that with the particular filters that we're looking at through Cassini to figure out how bright the star should be. Photometry to see whether or not it actually worked or not. If it didn't work, we have to throw away that particular result and then try again, looking for a different correlation. And we keep hunting until we find one that the photometry worked for, or we give up. So here's an example. On the top left, we have a couple of stars where the photometry worked very nicely. We have one on the bottom right. You can see the star is sort of hidden in the skirt of the F-ring down there. And so because it has the fuzz of the F-ring around it, the intensity that we expect it to have, and so we throw it away. And then we have a star sort of in the middle here, this circle that we know that is on top of the ring, to see it, and so we simply throw it away. A second thing that we have to worry about is the streaking of the stars, because Cassini is tracking objects in the rings, maybe moons. That means that the star field in the background may be moving, even though the object that's being targeted is not being. So we have to actually do our correlation based on star streaks, and we have to do our photometry on streaked stars as well. Now, we can go talk about bodies. So for the icy satellites, for the most part, they're very easy because you can just take a Lambert shaded sphere of the ellipsoid model, you lay them on top of each other and say, well, that doesn't work very well, and then you correlate them. And the reason it works is because there's a sharp edge. And correlation works very nicely with sharp edges. Images, which we have a lot of, that don't have sharp images. For example, this one, we have a terminator rather than a limb. I appreciate having fuzziness. Images like this, we can't use the edge, but we have to use surface features. Tiger stripes, and Enceladus, whatever. Unfortunately, for reasons that I won't get into in this talk, although you can talk to me after if you want, any of the published maps of the various icy satellites that we found be very appropriate for the kind of navigation that we need to do. And thus, we actually have to create our own maps from scratch. An image that we don't know how to navigate like this, we go find an image that we do know how to navigate, latitude and longitude. All of the surface features into latitude, longitude space. Then we go back to the moon that we don't know how to navigate, and we the map back onto the ellipsoid again. And that gives us a map of surface features over here in green for the surface. But it's good enough that the craters will match up while we're doing our correlation. Over a lot of complexity here. There are cases where we have to have multiple original images that we mosaic together, lighting geometry, which direction the shadows are going on the craters, things like that. We have to take all of that into account, and we do. Finally, we can talk about rings. And rings are a subject near and dear to my heart. It's what I love to research. And the reason I love to research them is because they're so complex. There's something new that has never been seen before. And unfortunately, that means that navigation of them, because there's nothing that you can predict about them because we don't understand them well enough. So this image is actually wonderful. This was taken about 10 days ago by Cassini as part of its grand finale mission. As it was diving between the Saturn's rings and the Saturn atmosphere, it snapped this picture of the inner sea ring. These density waves. This is the Janus 2-to-1 density wave, the Janus 4-to-2 density waves down here. Incredibly complex. And they have, like here, as you can see, there's actually a glitch in the waves where it changes phase. We have no idea why. And why we certainly can't produce a model that we can correlate. Rings vary based on viewing geometry, lighting geometry, time, place, whether or not there are these waves present. There are embedded moonlets that cause wakes. There are all sorts of things that go on. So, abandon all hope, ye who enter here sign on the rings. But there are some things that we can do. And there are some features that are predictable. So for example, on the left here, you can see the Maxwell cap and the Maxwell ringlet. In the middle is the Bond cap, on the right is the Dawes cap. These are features that are known to have near circular orbits and are very well predicted. And there's some researchers who spend an enormous amount of time studies to figure out the orbital elements for these features. So in total, there are 67 of these available. Mainly they're in the B ring, in the Cassini division, and the C ring primarily. And for the rest of the rings, because we don't know what's in the rest of the rings. So we have to produce models that only have the features that we know about, and they're basically blank. But it works. So here's an example of how the model overlays with the actual image. That there are a lot of close-up images of the rings that we can't navigate. And unfortunately, that we're just kind of stuck with that one. So the current status of our project, this is all written in Python. We've written about 100,000 lines of Python. This is not a simple project. We have processed all of the Cassini images, actually multiple times, as we're debugging the thing. It takes about a CPU month to navigate everything. We have contracted with Amazon Web Services computing to do our processing. So we run about 500 virtual servers for less than a day. It costs us about $100, and everything gets done without us having to go on vacation all the time. Navigate about 3/4 of the images. Of the rest of them that don't navigate, a lot of them are close-ups of Saturn. We don't do anything with the atmospheric, and the fact that the winds are moving clouds around. That's a much more difficult problem. Some of them are close-ups of the ring. Some of them are problematic images of Titan. I glossed over Titan. Titan's incredibly complicated because it has an atmosphere. The atmosphere not only refracts the light in weird ways at different phase angles, but it also is wavelength dependent because different chemicals are at different altitudes in the atmosphere. And then there are 1% of the images that are just sort of messy for a variety of other reasons. So really quickly here, I'm just going to show a couple of fun things that you can do once you have these backplanes. So the outer edge of the B ring that were taken at the Saturn equinox in 2009. Closely, you can actually see shadows. And these are splashed up areas of the ring. So they're like little mountains at the edge of the B ring. They're about 3 kilometers tall. We don't know what causes them. You see the shadows and actually measure their height. So we can basically, with one button push, produce mosaics images seen before. So you guys get to be the first of the edge of the B ring. Do things like you can take the same technology and you can produce. And so this is the Saturn's F ring, which I've done my research on. And this is a complete 360-degree view of the F ring that was taken over 14 hours with Cassini staring at one point in space and then mosaics together and reprojected in sort of a distorted geometry so that you can see the details. And you can also do the same thing with bodies. We can produce our own surface maps. So as we take the various moons and reproject them into Lagrange space, we can then mosaic them together into and we can produce our own maps that are specific to particular lighting geometries, for example. And the point is that, not that people have done this before, but we literally do this with one button push. All this sort of falls out of the work that we do. And we'll be supplying this kind of data as well, along with all of the other metadata I've been talking about for people to use.
About one quick question.
Bob D. JPL, that's really impressive work on the navigation. I had a question on the backplanes. Since you said you're calling them backplanes, are they literally multiple bands on one image, or are these separate images like latitude image, a longitude image, and so on?
So for each image, there is a series of backplanes, each of which is I don't know how we're going to finally distribute it to the PDFs. I don't think you're going to download a single 20 by 1K by 1K. I think you're going to select which backplanes you care about. What we're planning to do, because this is an enormous amount of data to store for all 400,000 images, is we're going to store sort of intermediate results, hopefully, and then we're going to generate them for you on the fly. The navigation is done, but for the actual final geometry, you can fly when you download it from search tool, which I will be talking about tomorrow.
All right, so up next we have Spicy Pie, a Python wrapper for Spice. And the presenter is Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Annex. I'm a first-year graduate student at Johns Hopkins University Department of Earth and Planetary Science. I'm going to talk to you about Spicy Pie, wrapper for Spice. So my talk is going to be sort of broken down into 3 sections. The first section being more detail about what Spicy Pie is how do I make it, and go into a bit more detail about that, and maybe be helpful for other people working on projects here. And I'm going to talk about sort of goals and impacts so far on the project. So again, Spicy Pie is a Python wrapper for Spice. It's compatible with legacy Python, Python 2.7, really just 2.7, and Python 3, all those versions on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it's implemented in pure Python using the C-type support function interface, FFI, that's included in the Python standard library. It conforms to Python idioms, and you'll hear me say this term Pythonic, meaning, in short, that it makes sense in the context of our Python code. And a few more slides. I cover over 500 functions from C-Spice WIT tests. And they're working. There's a space. Data structures like cells, ellipses, and planes are also implemented and are available to you to use. And finally, it's an MIT license open source project, so pretty much whatever you want with it. This graph of the number of supported functions, and I think this has been updated for N66 and the various Python Spice wrappers that there are. And the target is like a 1-to-1 with C-Spice. Every C-Spice function should have a Spicy Pie function. And remaining things are like event kernel stuff and some of the more complicated functions, but as time goes on, that difference will get smaller. So why did I do this? As you may be aware, Python is a pretty popular programming language. In fact, it's in the top 5 in the world. And a person's first programming language, or especially IDL, because these are proprietary language, which of course costs money. You can download whatever. I was working on a project as an undergrad, working with Cassini data, and I was using Python, and there was a point where, oh, it'd be really great if I had Spice at this point, so I prototyped something that was basically the underlying implementation of Spicy Pie, and from there, well, it was fun. I was learning things about software development and Python, so I just kept at it. You know, HDTV, start coding, totally cool. So I mentioned a few slides ago Pythonic, and what does that really mean? So actually the C-Spice API to be a new act Python. So in the C-Spice API, you'll see places where they ask you how long string that this function needs to return, or how long is the input I'm giving you, or a scratch array to do some work. So I go ahead and take care of all of that for you. It doesn't really make sense in Python to do that. You can do that all at runtime. It simplifies a lot of the calls to C-Spice that you can see. Spice errors are promoted to Python exceptions. We're able to route behavior as may be needed, depending on the message in that error, which is really one of the really great features about Python. And I also elected, or was asked to, also throw exceptions for found flags. Originally I was sort of against this, but I think it's great now, because it's just not a thing in Python. Flags you then have to do a if statement, and it's just boilerplate. So it's better to try and handling if. It's really simple. If you have the pip command line tool, which is the Python package manager, it's as simple as running pip install Spicy Pie, and then you're done. It does all the work for you. Python user, there's a similar one-line command, which is a bit longer, but it works. It's complicated to do. So if this GIF works, I'm going to run through an example of using Spicy Pie. If you're familiar with some of the Spice documentation, this maybe, which it takes a couple seconds. GIF, and it doesn't play in real time. It should be familiar. Oh, it's not showing up here. Sorry. So first I enforced spicy pie. That's why it's in import matplotlib, which is a plotting library, and not being as things. I call TK version, which is a spicy management, so hey, it works. CD meta kernel, just to populate the kernel manager. BTC dates in as a Python strings in a list. Now I convert those into ephemeris time using the to anyone who uses Spice. So then, I got two floats out. Function. 4,000 points of time between those using numpy. There, and then I'm going to call SPK position on those times. Position of Cassini at those times. Set up a plot in just a sec. It keeps going. Again, a lot slower than real time. The title. And in a second, a plot should show up, and there we go. That's just a quick sample that should be familiar if you've seen some of the Spice documentation, the Spice guide working. So the next section I'm going to talk about how I was able to put this together, and it's because I follow sort of best practices from the open source community, leveraged my effort well. Code is version controlled in Git. You can post it on GitHub. You may have heard of GitHub. This is a website that posts to Git repositories, and people can look at my code. People run into issues running my code. They post, don't know how clear that figure is, but as I saw in the green one is something that's not solved. Well, wasn't solved. I took that screenshot, and now it is. It's just a system for people to say, hey, something's not working. I try to help them. Time seems to be successful. So one of the really key things that makes Spicy Pie possible were these continuous integration services that run in the cloud. And as an open source project, I get to use these for free because these companies are generous. Commit to the code base. The new code gets tested, Windows and Linux, on these ephemeral boxes that these services spin up. So I push commit, those servers spin up, they download the code, and they execute all the tests across all combinations of Python version and operating system. It gets validated. If errors pop up, I get to see those in the logs. I take corrective action, get things fixed. As well as I did last week, when I cut a new release, these services automatically upload artifacts to the package index in the Anaconda Cloud for people to download. So I did this on Friday and download the new version for N66, was mentioned earlier. These services also report code coverage results to a service called Coveralls for free. And all that's really doing is saying, for all the code in my repository, was any of it executed? That code, because that means you. So it's just a sniff test that shows that things are being executed. The tests for Spicy Pie come basically verbatim from the CSpice documentation with, in Python using Spicy Pie API instead of the CSpice API. So they're all real-world examples of Spice working. Useful to refer to if you're. As well for each commit, documentation is rebuilt from inline doc strings called read the docs, and that renders it out to HTML into a website you can browse. So that's the inline documentation rendered as HTML for one of those functions and PDF when you print it out. You get this sort of workflow of continuous integration delivery. It's made Spicy Pie really possible at all, and I think it's a great thing, and hopefully people can copy me. This will be slightly unscientific, but I talked about it in my abstract. This table downloads of two different versions of Spicy Pie. The bottom row is version 1.0 that I released last March. Is the result, the number of downloads for the October release of Spicy Pie, and I think I took these Google BigQuery table of Python package index downloads back in March, and they're filtered to be actual pip installs. If I look at the total download counts, it's in the thousands, but that's because they're bots downloading things for. So these are hopefully human beings actually downloading Spicy Pie, and I broke it down so each column is a different version of Python, and And from this, the trend I took from it, made me about it, is that with the newer version of Spicy Pie, there are more people using Python 3, which is good news because of Spicy Python. It's more work for me to maintain that. And it's kind of interesting growth in comparison to the 1.0 release where all Python 2 users, legacy Python. Results for Anaconda downloads, but there are fewer, only tens of people really downloading that. So there's quite a lot of effort getting that working, but I don't know if it's really helped that much in terms of adaptation, but so on, so that's good. Below that list is just the Google Scholar results of people actually explicitly referencing Spicy Pie in some document in their publication. DOI that people can refer to and you can cite it, but as far as I know, this is the only list of people who have actually said explicitly, I use Spicy Pie to get that done. There's probably more people using it, but who knows what they're actually doing. If it's engineers, maybe not. So now for the Spicy Pie, I need to go back and review some of the older wrapper functions because as time went on, I got better. I should preface by saying I started this project in about 2014, and really the bulk of the work was 2014 to 2015, just checking things here and there. Then a big burst now when the N66 was released. So there's a few functions that need to be wrapped still, and then there's another form function interface library called CFFI that you may want to investigate further to back Spicy Pie, which may make for a faster wrapper about that is slow now. If you try out Spicy Pie today or during this conference, try it, let me know what you think. It would be really great to get feedback on that, emails about it. Start the repo on GitHub, cite it in projects when you're actually using it for peer-reviewed publishable results, and spread the word in general about it. And if you're really motivated and want to help me out even more, consider becoming a maintainer. We'll love having extra hands on it. And thank you.
Well, people are getting up. I'll just say that I use Spicy Pie, and so I would highly recommend it. If you use Python and need to do Spicy, it's great.
So I was curious, you mentioned you're a graduate student. What's your plans for maintaining this in the future?
Many late nights. So if you were to, so actually, maybe this will work. I've skipped a slide. No. You can look on the GitHub, and you can sort of see my actual activity in Spicy Pie. There are months where I do nothing at all. So if it's like it didn't quite work, it's really like an hour here or there, like every few months. So it's not too bad. Except when they release a new version of Spice Standard, so that's Scramble, because they implement all those functions. So hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. Hopefully someone here may be motivated to try helping out. I think it's a great idea to spread it the effort throughout the community. Why it just has to be me. So yeah.
So we're big users of Spicy Pie and USGS, and so we really appreciate the work you did, and I applaud you for all of this. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
So as you've heard that we've got a 3-year time window for maybe a multi-threaded Spice is out. How do you feel about understanding? What would you want to change for Spice for Spicy Pie?
From having brief conversations earlier today, it basically sounds like this current API, precisely what we then call the legacy API, will probably stick around. So I think that part will still sort of survive. It's sort of a question what the new object-oriented API will look like, and may arise in terms of wrapping it. Because it's all C, it's all really simple. As I think this is an issue that other Python projects run into where they're actually trying to wrap C++ libraries, depending on the language features used, not quite work as expected. Really know yet until some of the stuff comes out. Good news is 3 years from now, hopefully done with coursework. So more time and deciding it, hopefully have more of a reason to say, hey, I should still work on this thing. Yeah, so we see. All right.
Chris, others, the Douglas Bar is open at 4:45 and food will be out at 5:15. And the poster session starts at 7:30. So just about probably when the booze runs out.
So,
All right, so next up is Ruby Spice Wrapper, and the presenter is.
All right. So my name is Nick Custis. I work with the LROC team at ASU. We've written a Ruby Spice wrapper. So a lot of different programming tasks have a specific language that they lend themselves to. If you're doing a highly optimized rendering engine, you're probably going to be going to something like C or assembly. If you're doing towers of control, you're probably going to go into something like Haskell or Prolog. These solutions are somewhere in the middle where there are a lot of programmers job. Some programmers have a go-to language that they use. In my case, it's Ruby, so it was inevitable that I was going to end up wrapping Spice for Ruby. Ruby Spice wrapper started a little bit before the LRO launch in 2009. It's a wraparound C language version of the Spice toolkit, and we released it as open source in 2013. But we've never really talked about it, so we thought we'd present it here so if others in the community are using Ruby, they have another available resource. I was not familiar with the Ruby programming language. It was started by Yukihiro Matsumoto. Everyone just calls him Mats. I had the good fortune of being able to chat with him at the 2001. Behind the language was to get rid of all the punctuation and syntax that languages inevitably adopt to make life easier for the compiler. Computers have gotten to a point where we should be making life easier for the humans, not the computer. When Ruby started, it has a powerful language with simple syntax. Everything's an object and everything's redefinable. It's garbage collected, typing, and uses a lot of blocks. Programming languages that use closures or lambda functions, basically the same thing. When writing a wrapper for a library, the first thing that usually comes to mind is using Swig. In the case of Spice, where it has a lot of multi-dimensional arrays and C pointers that are used as random selection of input and output, Swig for an app like that automatically knows why we did not use it here. So we instead directly wrapped it in C using the native Ruby API. Early on during development, when processing on the LROC cluster, hundreds of processes across multiple services, accessing the same kernels and process signals come in. Sometimes the kernels go away. We're never able to quite figure out why that happened. It seemed to happen during the Spice calls. Process signals as a transition from Ruby into Spice, and then restoring the original signal mask on the way out. We've eliminated that issue. Just filed that one under one of those hard to diagnose things that happen when there's too many variables to look at. In addition to the Spice functions we've wrapped, we've also made some convenience functions to go back and forth between the Ruby time objects. So we certainly haven't wrapped all of Spice, but we've wrapped all of our favorites for calculating orbit positions, instrument field of view, all that sort of thing.
Actually, I had to update this list twice while I was working on this presentation because we're continuing to add functions as we need them at the Rockstar. Here's an example of how to wrap a function. A wrapper who wants something else, it's actually pretty straightforward. The Ruby C API, the value type can represent any Ruby object. Static type versus Ruby's dynamic type checking on the way into the function. So we check our types for the input. We check for spice errors, which are returned as native Ruby exceptions, so they can be handled in the normal way. The resulting type back into Ruby. Most other spice functions are not any more complicated than that. Obviously, if you're dealing with a 6x6 vector calling function, it's going to be more verbose, but it's not more complicated. The Ruby spice wrapper for just about everything. This is kind of just the highlights. It's used in Lunaser for the 2 types of illumination layers it supports. Processing pipeline where it calculates all the geometry for PDS headers and other fields in our database. It's used for our Where's LRO display that we like to use for EPO events. Quite a variety of ops scripts, whether it's special observation planning, offsets as new predict kernels come in so our timing can be adjusted for targets. Reports use general orbit information at the fingertips of the ops. The Ruby spice wrapper is pretty straightforward. The gem is the Ruby version of a library. Download on the Lunaser download webpage. You can install it using the gem command like any other Ruby library. And it comes with compiled library versions for Linux, both 32-bit and 64, and Raspberry and ARM. Talk a little bit about why I specifically mentioned Raspberry and not Linux on that one. Use it for other platforms such as Windows or Spark or anything like that. You'll get the one that comes with the Spice Gem. An additional parameter to the that's appropriate for your platform, and it will compile against that version instead of the one that comes included in the gem file. So a special note on the ARM architecture. We have to note that Nate does not compile for the ARM architecture, nor do they support it. Architecture gets a little weird. It likes to do a software floating point rather than hardware floating point, because hardware floating point varies widely based on the processor. Kernel with the operating system. So we've included in the Spice Gem modules that work appropriately on all the versions of the Raspberry Pi. We suspect it would work on other small ARM chips as well, but definitely test it yourself before you rely on it. We believe the failure mode of ARM is it just wouldn't work, it wouldn't give you bad numbers. Definitely test yourself if you're going to use the ARM architecture. In the hallway, we have our Where's LRO display out there that is running on a Raspberry Pi, dynamically calculating LRO's position using Spice, so it does work. So in conclusion, using the right tool or the right programming language for the job is easier when fundamental library is available. So whether your favorite language is C or Python or Ruby, having these libraries available in more languages helps us all. All Spice functions, it is pretty straightforward to add them. We have released this open source, so if anyone wants to contribute anything from their own project, we can certainly wrap it back in. It has been around for 8 years so far, and it's still being actively developed and maintained.
Concerning the Raspberry Pi version, Spice toolkit did you use when you built that?
So the one that's in the gem currently on the website is against N65. The next time we push the gem out, we put it against N66. The platform, it's built against the ARM chipset that are in the Raspberry 2 and 3, although it appears to still work under the Raspberry 1 and the Pi 0 as well.
The C-Spice toolkit. Base C-Spice toolkit.
We compiled it ourselves from source.
Which source package?
We basically have it was likely the Linux x86 64, and then just recompiled it for ARM.
have not tested Raspberry Pi, but I've intended to for a long time.
Mhm. So yeah, it does work. You just have to be careful about floating point for the specific ARM architecture.
What options do the pilot requires to avoid that problem?
It really depends greatly on which specific ARM you have. If you do a Google search for whichever ARM processor you have, usually you'll find a lot of posts about floating point compilation. Unfortunately, sometimes they're also conflicting, so it's hard to get a clear story. But from our experience, when we've used the wrong compilation flags, it tends to just break. So it's it's easy to sort through for you to find out what's going to work on that chipset.
All right, and so last up today is Will It Blend Getting Spicy with DTMs, Planetary Visualization, and the presenter is
Well, thanks everybody for sticking around till the very end. I promised that quickly so we can all go eat and take a look at some cool posters. So for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Laura Davis. I work with the LROC team there at ASU, and I'm here to talk about my team's work in planetary visualization and the open source animation program Blender. So a little bit of background. We've been able to produce 3D flyovers in Blender, a method of importing regional and global DTMs. There are some in the past to import these DTMs, but specific to a particular data set, such as DTM import script, or they've been dependent on specific Blender versions, is specific to LRO. It'll work with pretty much any GDAL readable DTM, but it's also less likely to need to continually update as Blender updates. Spice import script uses Spice to create realistic spacecraft movement within Blender through animating a little model of the LRO. Before we even get into Blender, it's important to convert our images into a file format that Blender likes. So Blender doesn't support cubes or geotiffs, at least not 32-bit geotiffs. So for our purposes, we've decided to import, into 16-bit PNGs. This we use GDAL info to find the DTM's footprint, width, and length, and that's in pixels, scale, and then we multiply the scale by the size to find in kilometers or meters, and then we convert it into kilometers. Maximum and minimum elevation. I'll translate minimum elevation to translate the DTM from its original format into a 16-bit PNG. For in Blender, you'll need DTM and an orthophoto. So we have LaMoreQ, its DTM, and its orthographic image. Blender interface, we're going to import the orthographic image through a menu option called Import Images as Planes. Like in the Blender interface, it's a screenshot I've taken here. use the image in kilometers, this value here, and that sets our horizontal scale. Then once we're in Blender, we use a modifier called subdivide surface. And what this does, orthophoto, this is a wireframe view here, and it takes it from this 4 vertices and subdivides it into a flexible mesh so that we can apply topography to it later with the DTM. And we apply topography modifier. So that's what it looks like here. If we add the DTM here, what the mesh of the image that we've imported. The difference between the DTM's maximum and minimum elevation in kilometers as so right there. We also set the texture coordinates to UV, and UV is an image mapping. Two-dimensional textures are wrapped over 3D surfaces. An example, an animated flyover of the DTM that example of the type of video that we've been able to produce. Alrighty, so the procedure for importing global DTMs is a little bit reversed from the regional DTMs. 16-bit DTM, and we have one here. That's the WAC GLD100. We have a photo that matches the extents, and this is the normalized reflectance. Instead of importing the orthophoto first in Blender, we start by adding this UV sphere. So it's basically an object in Blender that's a mesh. When we edit, when we take the sphere, so you can see that when we take the sphere into edit mode in Blender, I match the projection of the image that we're trying to map to the sphere. So we edit the sphere's vertices to produce something that looks like that, to ensure that the will project correctly onto this sphere. Then, just like with regional DTMs, we subdivide the sphere and add topography to it, like that. Instead of using just the max and the min to apply the strength of this displacement, we instead use the max minus the min, the radius of our planetary body, in this case it's the moon, and then we multiply it by the Blender object's radius. And then we add our orthophoto as the texture. Issue at the poles here, there's a little when we add the texture, as you can see here, present in the model without the texture applied to it. One method to fix this distortion, and we're about this close, just not quite there yet. When we want to add realistic spacecraft animation with Blender, the best way to do it was to import Spice. Allows script access through a variety of languages, such as Ruby. We decided to use the Ruby Spice wrapper just to import Spice ephemeris, Blender time, location and orientation to a Blender object. And I have an example coming up. To do this in the Blender interface, you're going to need 3 things. 3D model of your spacecraft. This script is limited to LRO, but we're looking to expand it. In the Blender interface, I have a little LRO here. It's not to scale, obviously, because if it were to scale, you wouldn't be able to see it. I have my 3D model of the moon. That's import script. So here we have our scene. This is a small shot of what the user input part of the script looks like. We add the start time, the end time, frame where we want to start the animation, and the frame where we want to stop the animation. On the script from there, and come up and ends up looking something like this, if I can get it to play. Yeah, so this is an example of a video that we made. We're doing some stereo imaging in this video. So we're going to watch Elrose Slew right about there-ish. Not only the global model in Blender, but for script in action. I know this is a really brief overview. Fortunately, we've been able to work out a workshop tomorrow. So if you want step-by-step instruction on how to do this in Blender, it'll be at 4:15, right next door. It's going to be really fun. If you're completely new to Blender, I would strongly recommend you download Blender tonight. Have time to start playing around and getting used to the interface. These are the materials that we're going to need for the workshop, including the set of files, and I've already translated some DTMs for you so we don't have to go through the steps of GDAL. Do we have that available for download yet, or?
Trent was going to advertise it somewhere for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll send it out. I'll send it out to me.
Cool, thank you. So I'll just leave this slide up, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Concerning your three-dimensional model using the DTM, what steps different to create a 3D model? Procedure, is it restricted only to DTMs, or if a different data source was available, could you adapt it to that data source?
Excellent question. So far, we've only done DTMs. Not sure. I'd like to do some research and talk with that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? For today, I encourage you to go out in the hall and take a look at some posters and get some food and whatever other. Okay.
Eventually, I'll be with you back. Yeah. So if you look at right now,
Right. So something similar.
They will, yeah. So people, outside. But in my opinion,
Thank you.
So you want to talk about
It's not a talk, it's just demo. I was just gonna show, and show. You can do it, you can do it for me. It's whatever on the floor is on the floor.
Yeah.
But I was actually showing Frank the prison data. Oh, look at that. He said, oh, it's nice to have it up.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. See you later.
Yeah. I'll see you out in the posters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not memorized. Can I email it to you?
Yeah. Great.
Just email the names.
Yeah.
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 Anyways, so what's expected in that session?
Oh, did you not ask for that?
No.
Was it?
Yes.
It's, you know.
I'm happy to do something, I just want to know what I'm doing.
Well, that's really more of a, that was designed to, the last three, I think are just in depth, this is what the software does. Kind of thing, it doesn't have to be, I'm talking about, so the morning session is code, all this stuff. The afternoon sessions are just talking to us. So it's really up to you.
The thing is, I'm sort of, okay, I'm sort of, I'm basically doing a lot of this.
Yeah, so, you know, in it, so.
I have a little bit of material, but
So I think we can talk about, it's more about, you know, what do you want to see, how does this work, what is discussion site for people, so it's not going to be like, if you want to make a discussion, whatever you want to do, it's up to you, it's very important, so anything in that.
It's probably going to be very
Yeah, but
no,
no, formal train wrecks were bloody martyrs. I wanted to, you know, I mean, you could even bring up things like, what do you want to see in PS4? You know, as far as from what
yeah,
probably going to be.
I want to see this course.
Yeah. Well, I just got word about PS4 reader.
You can see my issue with it, huh?
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
So, hi.
Yes.
So about the talk. So we didn't prepare anything?
No.
So, two questions. How weird is it to have two presenters? At all?
I mean, I think this mic is fine. Someone wanted to be on the mic. Someone on the No, just, I mean, I would say it's perfectly fine. I think, is Zoe in here?
No, he's
So we didn't, oh, is he?
yeah, he's going tomorrow.
So
Either
I mean,
way.
I'm not afraid that I wouldn't be, use what you did every meeting.
That was very trivial. That was mostly introducing what is space,
Okay.
which removes like 5 minutes.
So another way to kind of extend it is you don't have to take a long time. And we can make it as I could be prepared to have people discuss different things. But we could make it as you know how people were showing animated GIFs in movies.
I was working.
Okay.
I was working.
I mean, if you wanted to take up a screen, an animated screen movie, I think you already have it, right?
Yeah, we had a screenshot of it. Not a screenshot, but a video of it.
So make sure to show those. You can show a couple. I mean, several. You could try to do it live. Oh,
No.
Yeah.
Never do live demos if you can avoid it.
Well, I remember how, yeah, you guys got it pretty challenging. So whenever you do a live demo, this is how it's right? So it's always good to have video backup.
I've done this a couple of times.
Yeah.
I didn't need to comment on you, of course.
Yeah.
Try this on us?
It's always good to have that slideshow backup if all helps. Something happened in the last conference I had, and it's just the network went down, and I felt bad. So he actually did a screenshot of it. Just saying.
Okay, I will tell Zoe, but it might be scratched.
Okay, just let me know. I'll have a backup. I'll do a backup discussion.
Okay. I mean, you can do the discussion.
I'm not going to talk to him. Make Jay do it.
He's already talking about like
I know, he's
3.
talking.
He's doing like 4.
No, I mean, I'm perfectly happy with you guys doing your even if it's not.
Well, I mean, 2 out of 3 people. Calvin.
I'll make Calvin.
If we're gonna do it, it's just gonna be me and Zoe.
Don't kill yourself. Don't stress over it. It's just this is informal, so
It's all cute.
It's all our buddies. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
No, it's no problem. It's no problem.
You forever.
I'd rather see you guys, if anything, just use your name. Then and you can keep it short. If you want to. You don't have to take up 15.
I will
Learning experience.
I will practice
Nice.
Alright, thanks.
No. I'm here. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We have one person. So just make sure the text has a nice. So things are far to the side. I'd rather see it.
getting one, so I'll get you right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, so I. He's yeah, but yeah, so he's actually just started. Just chatting. Yeah.
I haven't had that since since then I went last
Oh. Actually, you guys have four. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah.
Why don't you go first, question?
So did you get them? Yes. You just mentioned prison.
Why did high rise to Kansas?
That one.
No, I mean, we still have a conversation.
Right, and I don't. I'm very new fresh. And I don't want to seem pushy. I just have more people
No, go for it.
Right, so just the conversation about the work that I think you and Dylan discussed at OPSC.
Yep. How do we get that started?
Right,
I think that's the real question is so when we start the next fiscal. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about, I'll come find you if I need to.
Sure.
But we will be talking about server stuff tomorrow. But there's a lot going on in terms of Google working on stuff. Used to work at Lisa, he's working on it's another engine, and so I'm getting to the point where we have to kind of bring all these ideas together. And they're working on a very pretty base map that can be rendered, but isn't this kind of stuff. So I'm still in. Okay, because he's my web guy. So, I mean, he's my GIS guy, but he's trying to delve into server, so it'd be good for you guys to have some conversations and see. Hunter. I think his email is MA Hunter, USGS Hunter. So once you get the last, you get the middle initial. He's going to be implementing. So we got the new 10.5, and he can tell you what he's been successful with and what he hasn't been. But we haven't And
Or still the live stream.
oh, is it still going?
Yeah, because I was with Andrea.
I'm drinking my beer. Turned off the camera. So